Hello and welcome to day 23 of Vlogmas. Do you fancy doing some cooking together? I'm going to be cooking old and cooking new, so mince pies using the recipe that my mum used every single year. And then I've also found a new recipe for me for making little Christmas biscuits. I spotted this book in the charity shop. It cost me £1. It's called Scandinavian Christmas. And who doesn't love a festive looking cookbook? Let me flick through the pages just to inspire you. So I don't know whether this book is still in print or not, so if I can find it, I will link it in the description box underneath the video if you want to be inspired too. Mince pies first of all, so I'm sure this is the same recipe that everybody uses for their mince pies. Short crust pastry. Decide how much flour you want to use. So I've gone for £1 of flour and 8 ounces of fat, split between butter and lard. I say that hesitantly because we don't use lard these days because we don't eat meat. So, and when I say butter, I actually mean stalk. So that's a hard margarine. And just recently, just confuse things even further, we started cooking with vegan blocks. So I have actually got 2 blocks. One was yellow and one was white. So I don't know what difference that's going to make to my pastry mix this year. So if you are an expert on vegan vegetarian substitutes for butter and lard, do let me know what you use for your pastry mix. And then added to that, I've got mince meat in a jar from the supermarket. The first thing I'm going to do is to use the old wrapping from my margarine block to grease my mince pie pan. My mum used to do this, and consequently I have got a fridge door full of greased bits of paper, so I need to remember to throw that one away because it's been fully used now. I made my pastry last night when I was cooking, and I've put it in the fridge to chill, and I took it out about half an hour ago, so it should be cold but not so cold I can't roll it out. I dust my work surface with flour. Roll my rolling pin in it. I think that's probably too much flour. A nice round circle of dough and get rolling. I'm going to cut out 12 bases. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11 bases. And then put them into my pan. Roll it back into a ball again, flour up my surface, flour up my rolling pin. So I need one more base and then some tops. So for my tops, I like to use a slightly smaller pastry cutter. Then another trick my mum used to use is when she was running out of pastry. Sometimes she puts stars on the top. So I'm going to use a combination of stars and a combination of tops which have had a star cut out of the middle, just so I don't have to keep rolling the pastry out again and making it get tough. Hardest part of the day is trying to undo the lid of the mince meat jar, which I'm struggling to do. I'm going to have to go and ask my husband to help me. Husband to the rescue. And then taking a teaspoon. Now this is the tricky bit. You're going to overload them so they're nice and full. And if you do, the mincemeat will squidge out and leak everywhere. So a question for you. Number one, do you make your own mince pies? And if you do you make your own mincemeat? I'm not sure I could tell whether the mincemeat filling had been made fresh or out of a jar. I certainly can't tell with a Christmas pudding whether it's been shop bought or homemade. So mince pies filled. I then need to paint the tops around the edge with some water. This will be my glue, 2, 4, 6, 8. Oh, I've just cut that the wrong way around. Might be handy if I use the sharp edge. Press them around the edge. I'm then going to snip the tops with a pair of scissors just to let the steam out. Next question for you. Do you glaze your mince pies with a little bit of water or beaten up egg yolk? I don't. So these are going to be cooked, but they're not going to be golden in colour. So I've got the oven on at 200 degrees and I'll put them in for about 10 minutes to start, and possibly might have to wait 12 or 15 minutes before they're actually cooked. So ball up the pastry and start again. So I am going to make some jam tarts because my daughter doesn't like mince pies, but while I've got the oven on, I'm going to have a go at making my Scandinavian inspired biscuits. So I shall put that back in the fridge until I'm ready to have another quick baking session. And this is the other dough that I have got. So these are called, the lady who wrote the book has called them pepper nuts. Fun to make and easy for children to help with. These are part of everyday life in December and are served everywhere. And she says, don't leave the jar overnight where there is a light on, or the Nissa, the elves, will come and steal them. And I think that's where the naughty elf tradition, which is sort of quite new here but growing, comes into play. The name of these comes from the spices used. There's no actual pepper in them. So the spices are fresh grated nutmeg, ground ginger and ground cinnamon, and it's got soft brown sugar in it as well, which has given it the colour. So I'm going to take another one of my butter wrappers and just grease the lined baking tray here. And then the instructions here are to roll the dough out into sausages and then roll them out into balls. So I'm going to take a couple of slices. I think I've got plenty of flour left. So this is a little bit tough. Perhaps I've kept it in the fridge a bit too long. And I'm guessing here, but from the picture, something like that. And then 2 little balls. all ready for the oven. I reckon they need 2 more minutes. Jam tarts in. Let's see how well that greasing of the pan worked with my margarine wrappers. Oh, not bad, the first one. I think that was first time lucky. I'm not sure whether I haven't greased them properly or whether the mincemeat mix has leaked out of the cases and it's the stickiness that's binding them to the tray. But they are practically coming out whole. Just a little bit of rough damage around the edges, which makes them all the more homemade looking. If I wanted perfect, I would have gone to the supermarket. And while that last batch of mince pies cooks, the dreaded tidying up begins. Looking good, aren't they? So now for one last finishing touch. And do you remember in yesterday's Vlogmas episode, I was sugaring satsumas and apples to use in a flour arrangement, and this is the leftover sugar. So I thought I might give some of my mince pies a dusting of sugar, but to make it look a tiny bit trendier, I'm going to just cover half of the mince pies. Let's see whether it works. What do you reckon? Would you go to this trouble or just sprinkle randomly for each of the mince pies? I'm not sure anyone's actually going to notice. Perhaps if I'd used icing sugar, so it might have made more of a dramatic impact. I hope you've enjoyed cooking along with me. I'd love to hear about your Christmas traditions. Is making mince pies a big thing in your house, or do you avoid it at all costs? And in terms of my new bake this year, my little Scandinavian pepper biscuits, if I'm totally honest, I think I preferred the dough when it was raw. It just feels a bit leaden. Here's the butter. My last batch of mince pies are due to come out of the oven. I wonder whether I've made these a little bit too big. I thought I was rolling them out quite small, but the dough feels really, really heavy. I'm not going to try the mince pies because the insides will be a little bit too hot yet, but I know, they're just going to taste really, really lovely. It's a tried and trusted recipe for me. A little bit of dusting with the sugar on the top, which looks rather good, but I'm not sure whether doing just half a dusting really works. You can see how leaden those Scandinavian biscuits are, so I'm still chewing them. But it was my first time making them. We'll have to see whether I try it again. So that's all from me for now, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow. So the 23rd, so tomorrow will be Christmas Eve, the last episode in Vlogmas. So I do hope you've enjoyed this series. I've left a link to all the Vlogmas episodes in the description box underneath this video, as well as links to the videos I did in 2018 and 2017, and there's also a Christmas playlist. So if you want me to keep you company over the festive periods, perhaps you're doing your own bakes or wrapping your presents, don't forget to check out those playlists.